Picture the last mountain Moses will ever climb. Wind cutting sideways across bare rock. The Jordan Valley spread out below. Close enough to touch, far enough to never reach. No army beside him, no successor at his side, no witnesses at all. Only the wind moving through dry grass and a silence that has followed him for 40 years. Because in a few moments, the greatest prophet in Israel's history is going to die. And God is about to do something he does for no one else in the entire Bible. He is going to bury the body himself. Then, according to Scripture, he's going to hide the grave forever. No headstone, no shrine, no coordinates passed down through history. Story over. Except it isn't. 1,400 years later, buried inside one of the shortest letters in the New Testament, a single sentence rips the whole thing back open. Michael the archangel, when he disputed with the devil and argued about the body of Moses. One sentence. Then the Bible just moves on, as if we're not supposed to ask. We're going to ask anyway. Why does the devil want a corpse? Why does it take an archangel to stop him? And in a book that explains almost everything, why does this one moment get buried as deep as Moses himself? Hold on to that mountain, that silence, and that single sentence, because everything else in this story starts right there. Tonight, the last mystery of Moses. Chapter 1, A Life Too Big for a Grave. For 40 years, Moses carried an entire nation on his back. He stood in front of Pharaoh and refused to blink. He watched 10 plagues tear through Egypt. He raised his staff over the Red Sea and watched the water obey him. He climbed a mountain wrapped in smoke and fire and came down holding the 10 Commandments. By any measure, Moses is one of the most powerful figures in the whole Bible, which makes what happens next almost impossible to believe. Moses never sets foot in the Promised Land. Not because an enemy stopped him, not because his strength failed, because of one moment at a place called Meribah, when God told him to speak to a rock, and Moses, in frustration, struck it instead. It sounds like a small mistake, but in the world of Scripture, leaders answer to a higher standard. For that single act, God tells Moses he will see the Promised Land and never walk into it. Years pass. Moses climbs Mount Nebo alone. From the summit, he looks out across the valley at the land he has spent his entire life trying to reach. And there, on that mountain, he dies. What happens to his body next has no parallel anywhere else in the Bible. God buries Moses himself. Not Joshua, not Aaron's family, not the elders of Israel. God. Then comes the line that starts everything. No one knows his burial place to this day. No monument, no inscription, no marker future generations could kneel before. The greatest prophet Israel had ever known simply vanishes from the map. For 14 centuries, that was the end of the story. Chapter 2. One sentence, 1,000 questions. Then comes the book of Jude. Barely a page long, easy to skip past entirely. Jude is writing to warn believers about false teachers. In the middle of that warning, almost as an aside, he drops a line that appears nowhere else in the Bible. Michael the archangel disputed with the devil over the body of Moses. That's the entire account. No date, no location, no armies, no aftermath. Jude writes it as if his readers already know the story, then moves on, like he's just mentioned the weather. We don't know the story, so the questions start piling up immediately. Did this happen the moment Moses died, or centuries later? What could Satan possibly want from a dead man? Why does it take one of heaven's most powerful beings to stop him? And strangest of all, why does the Bible bring this up and then refuse to explain it? For 2,000 years, that silence has sent scholars, theologians, and skeptics back to the same single page, hunting for the rest of a story that may never have been fully written down at all. Chapter 3. A grave designed to disappear. To understand why anyone would fight over Moses' body, go back to the burial itself. In the ancient world, powerful men were rarely buried quietly. Egyptian pharaohs were sealed inside pyramids stacked with treasure. Mesopotamian kings raised monuments meant to outlast empires. A grave wasn't just a resting place, it was a statement of power, sometimes even a destination for worship. Moses got none of that. His grave didn't become a shrine. It didn't become anything. It disappeared. Many historians believe that was the entire point. Israel had a long, uncomfortable history of turning holy things into idols. Even an object Moses himself had built wasn't safe. The bronze serpent he made in the wilderness eventually had to be destroyed generations later because people had started worshiping it instead of God. Now picture the alternative. Imagine if Israel had known exactly where Moses was buried. Would future generations have knelt at his tomb instead of turning to his God? Scripture never spells that out, but it's the theory scholars keep circling back to, that hiding the grave wasn't secrecy for its own sake. It was protection, which still leaves the far stranger question standing. Why would the devil care? Chapter 4. The Accuser. Across Scripture, Satan rarely shows up swinging a weapon. He shows up with a case. In the book of Job, he stands in the presence of God and questions why Job is even faithful in the first place. In the book of Zechariah, he stands beside a high priest named Joshua, accusing him openly. In Revelation, he's given an actual title, the Accuser. Even his name works against him. The word Jude uses for the devil, diabolos, literally means the slanderer. The accusation isn't just something he does, it's built into what he's called. And Michael isn't a random choice to stand against him either. Elsewhere in Scripture, in the book of Daniel, he's named the guardian prince assigned specifically to Israel. If anyone in heaven had a personal stake in defending Moses, it was him. Set that pattern beside the fight over Moses' body, and one theory rises above the rest. What if Satan wasn't trying to steal a corpse at all? What if he was building an argument? Moses had sinned. Everyone remembered Meribah, the rock, the anger, the judgment God had already handed down. Perhaps Satan's claim was simple. This man broke the law, and the law has consequences. Here's where it gets even more interesting. Michael doesn't out-argue him. He doesn't threaten him. He doesn't even insult him. Heaven's own warrior archangel answers with exactly one line, "The Lord rebuke you." Not a verdict, not a punishment, a refusal to even take the case into his own hands. Even one of the most powerful beings in Scripture leaves final judgment to God alone. No one can say with certainty this is exactly what happened. The Bible never fills in the rest, but the theory fits the devil's pattern so precisely that most scholars treat it as the leading explanation. Chapter 5. An echo from another book. If you want the strongest clue in this entire mystery, it isn't in Jude at all. It's in Zechariah. In that vision, the high priest Joshua stands on trial. Satan stands beside him, accusing him. And the response from heaven is almost word for word what Michael says centuries later, "The Lord rebuke you, Satan." Same phrase, same posture, same refusal to let the accuser win by argument alone. That's not a coincidence scholars take lightly. In Scripture, this kind of deliberate echo has a name, typology. One story quietly written to be read through the lens of another. If Jude is using it here, he isn't just borrowing a phrase. He may be telling us exactly how to read the whole dispute. If Jude is deliberately echoing Zechariah, the fight over Moses' body may never have been physical at all. No swords, no soldiers, no struggle over a corpse in the dirt, a courtroom. A trial inside the throne room of heaven, where the only weapon allowed is an argument, and the only verdict that matters belongs to God. Scripture doesn't confirm any of this directly, but the wording is close enough that few scholars believe it's an accident. Chapter 6. The Book That Disappeared. Here's where the mystery gets even stranger. Early Christian scholars believed Jude wasn't inventing this story. They believed he was quoting one. The source most often named is an ancient Jewish text called the Assumption of Moses. Today, only a fragment survives, and the exact section that would explain the dispute is missing, torn away, lost to time, or perhaps never copied down at all. Origen, one of Christianity's earliest and most respected scholars, believed Jude was drawing directly from that text, a story his original readers would have instantly recognized, even if we no longer can. That doesn't mean the lost material was scripture itself. Ancient writers referenced familiar traditions constantly, the same way a speaker today might invoke a well-known story without repeating it word for word. But it does mean something haunting. Somewhere, a very long time ago, someone wrote down the rest of this story in full. And at some point over the last 2,000 years, it vanished. Chapter 7. What the Ground Remembers. Can archaeology settle any of this? Not the dispute itself. Nothing can confirm a courtroom no camera could ever reach. But archaeology can confirm the mountain. Mount Nebo still stands today, overlooking the same valley Moses once stared across. Christian pilgrims have been climbing it since at least the 4th century, drawn by the same pull we still feel tonight. Visitors who climb it see almost exactly what he saw. The same wide, dusty horizon stretching toward a land he was never allowed to enter. Excavations at the summit uncovered something remarkable. A Byzantine-era church, its floor covered in mosaics laid down by pilgrims who climbed this same mountain centuries ago, chasing some connection to Moses. What they never found is the one thing they were likely hoping for: a tomb. Despite generations of searching, no grave, no bones, no inscription has ever surfaced. In an odd way, that absence is its own kind of evidence. The ground itself seems to agree with the book. The grave was never meant to be found. Chapter 8. 4 Theories, 1 Silence. Strip away 2,000 years of speculation, and 4 main theories remain. The first, a legal claim. Satan accused Moses of violating God's command, and Michael answered him with nothing but God's own authority. Of every theory, this fits Satan's character throughout Scripture most closely, which is why most scholars treat it as the leading explanation. The second, a battle over idolatry. Some believe Satan wanted the body specifically to turn it into an object of worship, using Israel's own history against them. It's plausible. It's simply never stated outright. The third comes from later Jewish tradition rather than the Bible itself, that Michael was assigned only to bury Moses and Satan tried to interfere with the burial. An old story, thin evidence. The fourth is the boldest, that the body of Moses isn't a body at all, but a symbol for his legacy or even the covenant he carried down the mountain. Most historians find this the least convincing. Jude's wording reads far too naturally as an actual physical body. Here's the part that should stop you. Every one of these theories exists to answer a question the Bible itself refuses to answer. Maybe that refusal isn't an accident. Maybe it's the point. Chapter 9. What Scripture refuses to say before going further. It's worth being honest about what the Bible does not claim. It never says Michael and Satan fought with weapons. It never says the devil touched Moses' body. It never says Moses was raised back to life during the confrontation. It never tells us who won. It never says how long the dispute lasted or whether it happened once or many times. It doesn't even tell us exactly why the argument started. Every dramatic image you may already be picturing, a blade catching the light, a struggle in the dark, a body dragged between 2 supernatural forces, comes from imagination, later legend, or centuries of storytelling. Not from the text itself. That distinction matters. Separating what Scripture actually says from what generations of storytellers have layered on top is the only way to understand this mystery instead of just decorating it. Chapter 10. Moses returns. Here's where the story takes its most unexpected turn. Centuries after vanishing from history, Moses reappears. Not in a grave, not in a legend. On a mountain, wrapped in dazzling light, standing beside the prophet Elijah, speaking directly with Jesus, in the moment the Gospels call the Transfiguration. The disciples watching are so overwhelmed that Peter offers to build shelters, 1 for each of the 3. Before he can even finish the thought, a voice from heaven interrupts. And it doesn't point to Moses or to Elijah, it points to Jesus alone. Think about what that means. Whatever happened to his body, hidden, guarded, argued over in a courtroom no human ever witnessed, None of it kept Moses from standing in the presence of God. The mystery of the grave never defined him. His relationship with God did, and maybe that's the real reason the fight over his body was never meant to be the point of the story at all. Conclusion: the silence that speaks. So where does that leave us? A hidden grave, a one-line accusation, an archangel who refuses to fight on his own authority. 2,000 years of theologians, historians, and skeptics, all circling the same unanswered question. Archaeology can show us the mountain. Ancient texts can show us the pattern. Scholars can hand us 4 competing theories. None of them can hand us the ending. Maybe that was always the design. If Jude wanted us to feel something in that one verse, maybe it wasn't curiosity. Maybe it was awe. The sense that some battles happen so far beyond human sight that all we're ever allowed to witness is a single sentence, and a mountain with no tomb on it. Somewhere between that unmarked mountain and that unfinished verse may be one of the quietest, strangest battles the Bible ever recorded. And we still don't know how it ends. Next time, but Moses isn't the only figure in Scripture wrapped in mystery this deep. Next time, we go back even further, to a group of beings named in the Book of Enoch, known simply as the Watchers. Who were they? What did they do before the flood? And why did entire ancient traditions try to bury their story even deeper than Moses' grave? That investigation starts now.